The Osees, a Foul Form album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning. Here tonight to chat about this latest album from California-based garage punk, garage rock gods, the Osees. I got into them so many years ago and fell completely head over heels with this band with the release of one of their earlier records under the Osees names. The Master's Bedroom is worth spending a night in. I loved how colorful and freaky and quite frankly just how fucked up this album was. But it is so overly joyous, overly gory, and an absolute blast. And much like Ty Segal's discography, God, if you are, new to the band's discography and want to get into it, you have a lot of homework to do because they've been all over the place over the years. I loved early releases from them like the overly freaky and joyous Help and the seemingly even more overly joyous and freakish Dog Poison. Never been much of a warm slime guy, but since then the Osees, no matter what name that they are recording under, have been an absolute tour de force in modern psychedelic rock. The colorful blast of freak folk on Castlemania has been one of my favorite offerings from them for years, and I've always loved the throttling and krautrock inspired Carrion Crawler The Dream, which also was my first dip into the band's music at the end of the day. Also, Putrefiers 2, completely underrated. I did fall off again for a while. This may seem a little shocking to you because I know that it's a very popular album. I've never been much of a Floating Coffin guy, and Drop certainly has its moments, but it's very much a grower. But once again, ever since, I feel like the band has actually been on one of their more creative streaks. Mutilator Defeated at Last, I think it's their most accessible and catchy album. 2016, A Weird Exits is the very bloody sci-fi over-the-top romp that I did not know that they were capable of putting out, but it is great. And the weirdly colorful krautrock inspired Orc is really great as well. And even if it has lessened on me just a little bit, I still think Smoke Reverser is a really great collection of songs that kind of catalog the different sounds that they've been working with over the last few years. But once again, I find myself at a time in the Osees discography that I'm kind of puzzled on them once again. Face Stabber had so much going for it, but it was so long too, and some of the jams on this album I thought would be just so much better live than on tape. And their last album, Protein Threat, it's fine, it's just not very wildly new or exciting. It was the biggest shrug album that I've heard from them in so long. Now, they are back with their latest album, and I counted between all 5 or 6 of their names, they've released over 28 records in studio, which is wild to even think about. And here they are with this new album, and all of a sudden John Dwyer wants to write his love letter to DIY punk of the 80s, and it's pretty good. I mean, the fact that after all these years and under all these albums, they are still finding ways to turn our heads, it's pretty exciting. This album starts off with Funeral Solution. It is one scuzzy, dirty sounding star coming complete with really noisy production, these vocals. And it's a very DIY sound, and you know what? They do it a lot of justice. This track is a great example of it. This is spontaneous and wild and freaky and handled with a lot of care and love for the genres that they, were inspired by for this album. It's a wake-up call. Frock Block is really good too. It is freakish and oddly joyous in a way that only John Dwyer can put on paper. This rip is really legit though. It is freaking harsh. And the noisy production that we get here, which is scuzzy as all hell, makes it sound really true to form. Not only that, but John Dwyer has this really uncanny way of just pulling out a sound that's new for the Osees, but it kind of sounds like he's personally been doing it for years. This is no different. It's also oddly catchy, or about as catchy as a track like this can be. Then we have this album's title track, A Foul Form. This track freaking rips. It might be the best track here. It is so hard, and John Dwyer screams on this track. Oh! And this riff just seems like oddly untamable and completely off the rails, but you can also tell that it's a John Dwyer Osees riff at the end of the day. It is freaking raw, man. Scum Show is really good too. This track is much more tense and claustrophobic in its own weird way. But don't worry, it's equally as explosive and dynamic and in your face. I mean, truthfully, this is one of the gnarliest and rawest recordings that we've gotten from Osees in a really long time. It's really exciting. There's moments like this that just make it perfect for for your workout playlist. Overall, this album is pretty enjoyable at the end of the day. A very interesting detour in Osees' discography, and one of the better releases that they've made in a while, actually. Some of the puzzle pieces just don't fit for me, though. I think Too Late for Suicide's the weakest track here. You may not agree with me, but it's tracks like this that I feel like Osees just lose their focus a little bit. This is a puzzle piece that just doesn't fit. It seems oddly out of place. With all of the raw power and emotion and gnarly riffs that this album has to offer, this is just an odd choosing. Like, this sounds like an Osees track at the end of the day for sure, but not one that really belongs on this project. And trust me, if you've listened to the Osees as long as I have, you will know that they are no stranger to shifting sounds, sometimes multiple times within an album or between a few tracks. But in an album that is so dedicated to DIY hardcore and old school punk, it's odd. A bird and snare just seems like a weird leftover, just a couple of minutes of just noise that just happened on set and they just said, hey, let's record this. Doesn't really add much. And I had high hopes for Fucking Kill Me, but I have equally as rough thoughts on this track. I don't know, I just feel like this is a track that needed a little bit more, I don't know, oomph to it. It just seems very stiff. This to me sounds like a track that would have showed up on like Face Stabber, and I would have liked some elements to it, but I would have said, you kind of need to iron out some of the kinks. While not perfect though, this album is still a huge testament to what the Osees can do at a moment's notice, no less. Perm Act, I don't know how I could ever hate this. I love this alarming riff that starts off this track that just ushers in the chaos of the rest of this track. And what follows is upbeat and punky, but interestingly enough, seems much more interested in an art punk sound than a hardcore sound or a DIY sound. It sounds like this track was much more influenced by, like, I don't know, the work of Wire compared to the work of, like, I don't know, Minor Threat. It's ghoulish and freakish and so odd, but it also sonically sounds better than most of the tracks on here. It's great. Social Butt is also just so up my alley. I can't, like, write home enough about just how raw and explosive so much of this album really is. It's done very well, but in a lot of ways it also has the joyously freakish and odd nature as some of their early recordings dating back to Castlemania and Help. But the riff is great, it's agitated as all hell, it will get you into the pits, and John Dwyer's vocals, once again, I haven't heard him this agitated in years, and I do like that a lot. And they end off this album with one of the most raw and intense and explosive tracks here with Sacrifice. It just one last short blast of energy, and I do like that. It may be the most true to form track here. I mean, it is batshit insane at times. We get these monstrous growled vocals behind John, which I don't know where those came from. They are campy as hell, but I absolutely love it. This project is a lot of fun, and maybe the most overtly fun Osees project in quite some time. I'm liking a lot of what they do here, especially because this is their first real outing in these natures. Like, they've done heavier albums before in the past, but nothing this raw, nothing this explosive. It's a really interesting sound, and it's a great love letter to DIY hardcore from, you know, back in the 80s, something that John has never really shown much appreciation for, but, you know, he's an onion at the end of the day. The guy has so much to offer, and you know what? This actually, I feel like, has gotten them back on a really interesting track, and I'm interested to see where they go from here. I'm feeling a very strong 7 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.